It is the role of a poet to find and share this beauty, this reality. Our next speaker refers to poetry as the language of fire. She will relate this language to the burning ground that so many of us sense our feet are upon. Please welcome the poet, Heidi Robbins.
Hello, loves. Thank you, Eva. It's such a total joy to look out and feel such radiant friendship in this group. Such established, look at the little ones, such established radiant friendship and such potential radiant friendship. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm also so grateful to stand on this stage where so much goodness has already occurred, where such a beautiful field has already been woven, and standing here, one can feel that, and it's quite beautiful. So today I'm going to talk about fire, and I'm going to talk about the language of fire, which I think poetry is the language of fire. I think there are many ways into fire. It's not just poetry, but poetry is one sure way to walk in fire. And when we are walking in fire, fire burns away. It burns away the inessential. And I think poetry does that as well. And so sometimes when we're in our most raw places, we can't listen to the mundane. We actually have to listen to something more heightened, or something more to the point, or something that bypasses the mind and pierces the heart. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But first, I want to tell you a story. So just a couple of weeks ago, maybe, 6 weeks ago, my family and I, we went to Casa Bianca, an Italian restaurant in Eagle Rock, California, and we felt like we wanted to just have a nice, quiet night. Casa Bianca is one of those holes in the walls that are really popular, covered with 8x10 photographs of actors with their, signatures that all love their pizza, and you have to go early or you don't get a table. So we went early. And we got like the last table. But even so, when we went to order our pizza, the waitress said, well, it'll be at least 40 minutes. And at that point, Dylan was already pretty, Dylan, my 4-year-old, was rather exhausted. And we didn't bring any crayons and we didn't bring any toys. And I began to worry that the family joyous outing was going to unravel and turn to misery. So Andrew offered to take him out, and I said, no. And Andrew's usually the one that picks up the fork and is like, Mr. Fork is coming to talk to you now, or puts a napkin on his head or something. But in this rare instance, I actually said, wait. And I thought about this book that I had been looking at, which was this beautiful book of mudras. And I had just been spending some time with that morning. And I said, let's go around and make up our own mudras. And I said, a mudra, of course, mudra is where the soul comes through the form and says something precisely just with the form, not with words. And so I showed them, and I said, how about, I can't remember what mine was. Oh, look at mine. How about this is delicacy? And everyone, and Kate and Dylan and Andrew said, okay, delicacy. And Kate said, this is connection. And so we all said, this is connection. And Andrew said, this is creativity. And so we all did creativity. And by this point, the other eaters were starting to look at us rather strangely, but I'm usually like, I'm usually the awkward one that's like, I'll stop doing this. But I was like, yeah, this is too much fun. And my little 4-year-old, Sagittarius, goes, this is spirit, which was so cool. Spirit. And so we all did spirit, and that was a big one. And I said, this is family. And this was protection, and this was kiss. And Kate said, this is wisdom. So we had this very joyous time, which is rare when a family goes out and has dinner on a Thursday night. It's usually we stare at each other and color and try to keep the peace, right? But I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful time. And I tell you about it because then a couple weeks later, I was about to leave, and I can't remember where I was going, but we were saying goodbye, and we were in the dining room. And there was just a moment where we sort of looked at each other, and I don't remember who started it, but we said, family. And we said, protection. And we sort of leaned in and we said, kiss. So there's this gorgeous moment where, where words were bypassed. And I want to say to you where a fire of love burned away the inessential. And where a gesture, a certain word, captured something far more subtle and whole. So I think that poetry does that. I think this is a kind of poetry. I mean, I don't even know many mudras, right? I want to learn them. That's why I have the book. But I think that's what poetry does. So just for one moment, turn to the person next to you, look at their eyes. Go ahead, even if you're not sitting next to you, just look. Just look. Find somebody, even if it's a threesome, turn around. And I want you, at the count of three, smile. At the count of three, I want you to invent the mudra for fire. 1, 2, 3. Yes. It's beautiful. Keep it there for a minute and look at it and appreciate it. Look into your eyes. Gorgeous. And let it go. Yes. So playful, that's you playing with fire at the moment, right? And I actually encourage you to make up, what does that feel like? And even note what you chose, and even note how that felt in your body, and note how much shyness was there, and note how much conviction was there, and note how much freedom was there, because that's your at this very moment, in this very second, that's your relationship to fire, however you let it pour through you, okay? So, I just encourage you to play with that. So I was thinking about this talk, and I went away to Ojai, and you see, I need time and quiet when I think about a talk. My husband can write an article with a child on his head and, in the dining room with everything, tons of stuff going on, and he manages to do it, and I don't know how he does it, but I have to go away for time and space. Maybe some of you relate to that. So, and I actually sort of said, goodbye, dear ones, I will be gone for 2 days. And I went off to Ojai. And I rented a room at the Emerald Iguana, which maybe some of you know. I had a little credit there. It's this gorgeous Nestle hotel, or inn, really. And I went up, and I just so happened there was this new room called the Tree House, which is so beautiful. And I mean, usually I sort of just go to the Pepper Tree Retreat, which is gorgeous in its own way. It's so beautiful. So I went and I walked into this, and this room was like the most romantic room I have ever seen in my life. I mean, it was like huge bed and a clawfoot tub and a light that you turn on and it sparkles stars everywhere, and a balcony that looks out to a sunset. And I thought, okay, brought my little poetry books in and sat down and thought, well, another time for that. But now I'm going to think and work and fall in love with myself, maybe. I don't know, but. And I was deeply appreciative of the beauty, and in fact, probably what I first do when I go by myself is I fall asleep, I take a nap, I eat some chocolate, I fall asleep again, I moan a little bit, and then I get underway. But I went out to the balcony, and I was sitting on the balcony, and I started to write, and I started to think about fire. And I didn't know whether I was going to write some things about the talk, but I started to write a poem. And that was an interesting thing that happened, because I wasn't sure that that's what was going to happen. In any case, the wind started to pick up, and the trees started to blow. And this was right before that big windstorm that some of you were aware of like 5 days ago. Of course, I caused that, but no. But it was truly this really interesting thing where I was writing about fire. And it was like, okay. And the seed pods of the tree were falling down on me. And I could just feel in my own being this wrestling, this, how nature speaks to us when we're calling something in. So This first poem is what I call Fire's Invitation. And it's what came out of that time on the balcony. My room at the inn is for lovers. A bed bigger than a small pond. A balcony with 2 chairs cozied together. Skylights offering shafts of sunlight. Midnight star pools. Far from lonely, I am expectant. Late afternoon gusts of wind spill seed pods on my lap. The trees are whispering. They know my silent invitation. My stillness, my quiet breath, belie this invocation. But rest is required for surrender to flame. The beauty of the day almost unbearable. My skin is thinning. Dappled goodness seeps through every pore. Oh, my loves, can I tell you I am curious? I am willing to step closer. Already I am burning. Everything is. The dance around the flame is done. It is time, as there always is a time, as cycles end, as planets move, to stand at the center and burn. And yes, now the wind has left the trees, do you hear? Fire moves fast across the valley. There is nothing to be lost. Fear devoured, yes. Dark obstruction turned to ash, yes. And yes, the heat, and yes, the letting go. And yes, and yes, and yes. So, a little later that weekend, after I had written that and sat with that and was sort of alone in the room late at night, I thought, what have I done? Do you know that feeling? When you invoke something, when you say, I am ready for change, when you call in fire, and a fear responds, a fear of, have I just called in loss? Have I just called in destruction? Have I just called in annihilation? And I don't want to do that. You know, that's the voice that comes up, right? But the truth is, fire is annihilating, but it is creating, and we're going to hear that in the next poem. And it burns away all the obstructions to the fire of love, to the fire of creativity, to the fire of the mind. And so, yes, I do want to invite that in. You know, and I think that it takes a tremendous amount of courage for each of us to do that. And we all do that in our own way, that invitation. Perhaps it's an invitation to water, perhaps it's an invitation to fire, but fire, there are certain moments in our life when we're ready for fire. And I think a lot of speakers have spoken to this, that you know, this is a time that we're ready to turn up the heat a bit. Yeah, because when we turn up the heat, we have this gift of the heart, gift of creativity, gift of ourself, gift of identification that's possible. So I did think to myself, okay, yes, no, I'm glad, yes, no. I said, I'm glad I wrote this poem. I'm glad I wrote this. And yes, it even has a quality of welcoming in this very intimate dance, you know, of flame. Tremendously intimate, because it burns everything away except essentially who you are. And that's raw and vulnerable and gorgeous and naked and beautiful, yeah? So this poem, it's interesting, you know, when Nicholas spoke of the light of the stars penetrating our lives, yeah? I was like, oh, yes, the light of the stars penetrating our lives. This poem is almost like a part 2, or mine is a part 2 to this poem. And it's called The Fire, because all these poems today are going to be about fire, or they're going to be poetry that acts as fire as we walk through crises, yeah? So this poem is by Franz Wright, who I am loving these days. And feel, this is the fire of the sun, okay? Listen, I've light in my eyes and on my skin. The warmth of a star, so strange is this that I can barely comprehend it. I think I'll lift my face to it, and then I lift my face and don't even know how this is done. And everything alive, and everything's alive, is turning into something else, as at the heart of some annihilating, or is it creating fire that's burning unseeably always, burning at such speeds as eyes cannot detect? Just try to observe your own face growing old in the mirror. Or is it beginning to be born? Isn't that great? I mean, really, just this feeling of really just try to observe. I mean, we've all had this experience, right? This feeling of this is changing. And usually it's this is changing, right? Usually there's like analysis of all that is dying, that is falling away. But just try to observe your own face growing old in the mirror, or is it beginning to be born? And I say to you, yes, it's beginning to be born when you're willing to stand at the center of this annihilating, or is it this creating fire, right? Because we've all had these experiences when we've been touched by something that wakes us up, when we've been burned, when we've been alighted, when we've been ignited. We've all had these experiences when even we've had the experiences looking at someone for whom this has happened, right? When somebody has had devastating loss, or when somebody's woken up to their truest passion, right? And we look at them and we go, you look different. You look gorgeous. You look beautiful. And they might be like, what are you talking about, right? But there's the essential is there, yeah? So, I mean, everything alive and everything's alive is turning into something else as at the heart of some annihilating, or is it creating fire that's burning unseeably always? Yeah. So this sense that we're always turning into something else. We're always transmuting. Hopefully we're always reaching a higher vibration, a higher frequency. And that's the potential, and that's why it's worth it to step into the fire, and that's why it's worth it to invoke the fire. And, you know, there are moments in our lives when we actually tap into, you know, I think there's a lineage of fire in our lives, right? There's a lineage of fire, waking up to a creative fire, waking up to a fire of love. And there are moments that we can really say, I was alive there, or I felt alive, or I was burning there. And then we get gray or obstructed or heavy or tired or what's the use, or it's been done before, you know, or we get realistic, as Rabbi Lerner said, right? We get realistic and we forget. And so this poem is called Renewal, and this is a poem that I wrote, again, and this speaks to trying to touch that moment of hearkening back to a moment in which I felt very alive, okay? And perhaps you will have your own story of this. I'm driving with my family through Gallup, New Mexico. The 9th grade is holding a car wash in the high school parking lot. They stand with signs, half awkward in apology, half in sheer delight, wholly in love. Something in the way one body pushes against another in nowness stops my breath, hurtling me back through years to some joy my body has never forgotten. I turn my face to the window, tears impossible to explain, except to say that time unfolds in unexpected ways, and the linear isn't most true. Every part of me is young and expectant, curious and full, shy and in love, in love, in love. And even tonight, in the darkness, wrapped in my husband's arms, the children asleep, my body sings. Right? So this beautiful moment, this moment of just seeing 2 little high school kids in a parking lot holding a sign and nuzzling up to each other, right? I mean, it's just like, for me, it was this moment of, yes, I mean, It's not nostalgia, though. It's not nostalgia. It's not the glory days. It's not that. It's these moments of essential being where love is pouring through, or where creativity is pouring through, or the mind is alive. It's this. It's not like, oh, I wish I were 16 again. No, it's not that. It's like, that was unobstructed love pouring through. Yeah? So, cut back to Ojai and the treehouse. And I'm writing. And there's a big fat fly in the room. Big fat fly. I mean, I haven't seen a fly this big. I didn't know. I thought it was some winged creature that I had never, whatever. So it was in the room. I'd come back in. I'd been on the balcony. I came back inside, sitting in one of these armchairs at the end of the bed, writing, and it's like, zoom, and it was like hurtling itself against the window, like smashing itself against the window and making an ungodly noise. And I thought, I'll ignore this. It will be fine. And then I thought, no, after a few minutes, I can't do that. And I tried to usher this fly out, but this fly was the most stubborn fly one could possibly imagine. It would not be helped, and it kept on finding crevices to go to. And I was like, okay, well, I am the fly. I honestly, tell you, I promise you, I tried not to write this poem about the fly, but I did. But truly, I thought, yes, burning and fire and all of that, but guess what? I spend 96% of my time hurtling myself against this glass. So I'm just gonna appreciate you, fly, and this is how it went down. But it's the only way, this big flat fly seems to say as he throws himself once more against the impenetrable glass, certain it is his freedom. The noise he makes, the ruckus, the indignation. His fear spills everywhere as he falls exhausted at the edge of the illusion, resting, terrified, blind. I try to usher him through the open door just behind his failed attempts. He clings to what he knows. I think I should kill him. As he won't be helped and his frenzy fills the room. But my heart softens with his fierce conviction. I leave the room instead, and when I return, his still form, finally spent, sounds only silence. The light from the door catches his wing. I can't help a foolish thought. Wasn't it all so obvious? He had only to turn and fly. Right? Isn't it all so obvious? But now the addendum to the fly story. There is an addendum, which is that the next day, 18 hours later, I sat down again and was writing again, and there was a fly. And it sounded very remarkably like the first fly. And I thought, this is crazy. And I climbed up on the bed awkwardly, and I looked to the windowsill, and the fly was gone. And I thought, this fly has had a second lease on life. I mean, I didn't poke at the fly the first time. I didn't. But he looked dead. I was like, he's dead. I'll write a poem about how he dies. But that he was dead. But in fact, he was having a second lease on life, flying around, and I said, okay, again, I need to work. I'll help him usher out. I'll usher him out. Again, nothing. He got stuck up somewhere. I sat down. I was like, and I kept writing. Went to have lunch, delicious lunch, came back, sat down, looked up, and on the floor, kid you not, the fly was crawling towards the door. I swear, it was, and this time he really was on his last legs. He was crawling toward, and the light of the afternoon sun was coming through, and I was like, yes, fly. And I did at this point lift him up and put him out on the balcony and let him have perhaps, maybe not, this was a strong fly, but I was thinking his final moments in the sun. So, but again, I mean, I know it's funny, but it also is just, there it was in the form of a fly, the greatest metaphor of all. When are we going to stop banging against the wall? When are we going to walk towards the truest fire, the truest light, all of that, you know? So I appreciated that journey with the fly. Okay, so, so I think that what happens with the fire is that we enter the fire. I'll speak about two brief ways that we enter the fire. I think one of the ways that we enter the fire is when we meet someone or we encounter something that sets us aflame. When someone comes in and is vibrating at a higher frequency, really, and we go, oh, yes, and something opens in us. Pablo Neruda says fever or unexpected wings when he encounters poetry. That's what opened it, this fever or unexpected wings. But something opens in us and we're lifted. And I think that's one very viable way that our heat is turned up, that the flame is turned up. I think another way is when fire takes us by storm, when we haven't consciously invoked it. And we've all obviously had this happen in our lives when there's profound loss, when we're devastated financially, when we lose our home, when we lose a loved one, right? There's something that fire takes us by storm and we are reeling in that. And what is that flame and how do we adjust to that flame? Yeah. So in the first instance, I want to offer another poem that I wrote about a woman who, in an instant, a complete stranger to me, turned the flame up for me. And I will never forget her, and it sounds like such a simple encounter, and maybe some of you have heard this poem before, but I've reworked it. And it's called Morning Walk. And by the way, I mean, I think you're already doing this, but one beautiful thing about poetry is that you don't have to listen here. You can listen with your heart, and you can listen with your breath, and you can listen with your feet, and with your left hip, and you can listen with different parts of your being. Frost kisses the oranges. The birds are curious with cold and chatter amongst themselves. I walk briskly down a stretch of road looking for patches of sun. My hands plunged in pockets, my brow crinkled with morning plans. She rides toward me on a rickety blue bike, weaving back and forth to make the incline easier. Her hair silver and flowing. She is flushed like a child who has come to report her latest adventure. Her face open, fresh, smooth, like a saint, really. Even with the effort of the climb, delight ripples in her wake. When we meet, her eyes shine. She laughs. Wait till you see the snow. She might have said, wait till you see beauty everywhere. Wait till you know the secret of all things. Wait till you know you are love. But she said what she did and rode by, her story told, her message delivered. I look to the capped peak in the distance. I see the beauty of a mountain rarely covered in winter, while my body is melting into spring. Tears stream down my face. A hardness around my heart dissolves. I fling open my arms and gather goodness to my chest as my body breaks into blossom. Wait till you see the snow, I whisper. Wait till you see it. And it was at that moment that, that was a turning point. That was a moment when this woman who was just living in presence, living in joy, living in her bike ride, living in the now, living in the beauty of nature, woke me up to the seriousness of life. Life is serious and I have to do things and have purpose and write important things and I'm in the most beautiful place I love, and I have not seen any of it. Yeah? I wonder where I got that. I don't know. We're all growing. Yeah. But it is, isn't it a beautiful, it's just, life is such a beautiful opportunity to watch that transition occur, you know, and to let go of some of this and to look up and to look at children, my beauties, you know, and to remember what's important. So that's an instance and where we can all be this light for one another. We can all be the one that's vibrating at a higher frequency. We can all, we don't know, one kind word, right? One beautiful smile, one, you look gorgeous today, whatever it is, you know, one moment like that is like, it can restore something and it can rekindle the flame of the heart. Now, when a fire comes in, and this is to the essence, right? When a fire comes in that is really, truly a burning ground, you know, this is where I feel there are many ways to address this moment. And certainly I think it has to involve beauty. It doesn't have to be poetry, but this moment of rawness, this moment of loss, this moment of devastation, right? It doesn't have to be poetry. It can be a gorgeous color, a red bird flying across the sky. It can be we reading the words of Djwal Khul, who can cut through and speak like as nothing else can heal, right? Or it can be a touch, yeah? But for me, of course, this language is poetry, and I think poetry can cut through the veils and cut through the heaviness of sadness and can act as a blessing, and it can clear away some of the heaviness. Just because one feels seen, because one feels witnessed, because one feels like we're speaking from a place where big things happen, not from the day to day, you know? So, and it's when we have to change perspective, when everything is lost, we have to change perspective. We have to look at it from a broader view. We have to stand back and look at the grace that is at work, right? Even as Lawson was saying, even as all these lesser fires are burning. So there's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful poet who I've recently just discovered, and her name is M. Claire. And she is like a female Hafiz, as far as I'm concerned. And I wish I remembered the name of her book, but it's like something, you know, it's like the deep, sacred, blah, 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 da, 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 heart. I mean, it's beautiful, and it's all orange and yellow, and it's beautiful. But she writes of this essential moment, all right? She writes this poem called Unrelenting Grace. Life conspires to bless us with an unrelenting grace. Who among us has not been touched by this generous hand, freeing us one or many layers at a time? You are the lucky one who has known annihilation and then absorption back into the love we seek. And it is you who knows that even as the soul cry rends your very chest, the whole of the universe shakes with love. In this place of all, there is at long, long last no place left to fall. You are the lucky one who has known annihilation and then absorption back into the love we seek. And it is you who knows that even as the soul cry rends your very chest, the whole of the universe shakes with love, right? And of course, in moments of crisis, we might not be able to let this in fully when we first encounter it, right? It might be, this is too beautiful or too simple, or it doesn't speak to the pain that I'm feeling. But if we live in it and swim in it and hold it as an unrelenting grace, whatever occurs in our lives is an unrelenting grace, because the fire is a blessing that clears away, as I said in my first poem, the dark obstruction, right? And it clears away all that has clung about our heart or our creativity or the way that we see the world. The scales fall away. Fire burns all that away. So we're left in the sense of open, raw vulnerability and grace, because we get to walk through the world. And I was, those pictures that Claire was showing, the eye to eye, they're so beautiful, aren't they? We get to look eye to eye, and we're stripped bare, and we get to see something much more deeply because we've been humbled or because we've burned to our essential being. And it's a privilege. It's a privilege to be burning. We are burning. And it's a privilege to be transmuting, and we are transmuting. And it's a privilege to recognize that because we are burning, we walk on sacred ground. It's a privilege to recognize, as Rumi says, that we can be the soul of this place because we are burning, because our heart is alive, because our creativity is alive, because our mind is alive. Yeah? So, when we're feeling most despairing, I suppose, and most gray and most heavy and most raw, I think we have to remember this unrelenting grace, this blessing that clears away obstruction so that we can be with one another as we truly want to be with one another. DK gives what Roberto Assagioli, as many of you know, that a beautiful image of the 7 spokes of radiant fire that he is to imagine. He imagines he's to stand in a protective wheel of fire. And he says it's not a fire that burns, but a fire that heals. And he is to send out 7 streams of radiant fire from his being. And I often think of it as a fire at the center of the chest. And he does his work of healing and service. And so it's protective for him because some second-ray disciples allow so much in that they actually need that protection. But it's also a glorious, radiant offering of the fire to others. And I love that image. So I want to just finish with one more poem that is by David Whyte. And many of you know I love David Whyte. And I'll just say that I recently went to one of his conferences at Asilomar in Pacific Grove, and I was like a little girl. I was so shy. I was feeling like I had to say something to him because he had meant so much to me in my life. I was like all throughout the whole 2 days, I was like, I have to say something to him. I was determined to say something to him, just anything. And he finished something, and he finished one of his sessions, and he was walking by me, and I stood up, and I was like, thank you. And and he was like, you're welcome. It was like this totally. I mean, he's gorgeous, and I'm sure I was just in the way. But these moments, right? He for me is a person that has. And this is interesting because his work has turned up my flame. I suppose his personality self, I don't know him, but there was a beautiful awkwardness in that encounter for sure. And but his work has ignited the flame in me for sure. So perhaps it's appropriate that I end with one of his poems. And this is about Moses and the burning bush, and it's also about the sacred ground. And it's about the privilege. It's about the privilege to walk in fire and to invoke the fire. Fire in the earth. And we know when Moses was told, in the way he was told, take off your shoes, he grew pale from that simple reminder of fire in the dusty earth. He never recovered his complicated way of loving again. and was free to love in the same way he felt the fire licking at his heels loved him. As if the lion earth could roar and take him in one moment. Every step he took from there was carefully placed. Everything he said mattered, as if he knew the constant witness of the ground and remembered his own face in the dust the moment before revelation. Since then, thousands have felt the same immobile tongue with which he tried to speak. Like the moment you too saw for the first time, your own house turned to ashes. Everything consumed so the road could open again. Your entire presence in your eyes and the world turning slowly into a single branch of flame. So may we all never recover our complicated way of loving again. Thank you, my family.